Look, as many of you know, the Republican Party has an unnatural allegiance to losers, and this didn't start with Donald Trump. This long predates that because for my entire life, and my parents' life and grandparents' life, American conservatives have been fascinated with defending the Confederacy. They insist upon honoring the memory of these people who took up arms against the United States of America to defend the right to own human beings as property. And so naturally, American conservatives are pretty upset that the military has decided, hey, we're no longer going to keep our installations named after Confederate generals like Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, Fort Polk, etc. A normal action taken by a sane society, but conservatives ain't having it. And the chief loser himself, Donald Trump, stepped up last week and offered up his bulletproof rationale as to why it's so vitally important that these forts maintain their namesakes. Check it out, see what he has to say.
Those great skyscrapers won two world wars. We won world wars out of forts. Fort Benning, Fort this, Fort that, many forts. They changed the name. We won wars out of these forts. They changed the name. They changed the name of the forts. A lot of people aren't too happy about that. Defeated, he said, unacceptable. Yeah. No, they changed the name of a lot of our forts. We won two world wars out of a lot of these forts, and they changed the name. It's unbelievable.
Well, there you have it. We won wars out of those forts, so we can't change the name of the fort. You can't really argue with that reasoning because it's not reasoning at all. And by the way, does he know that the fort isn't going anywhere? That it's just the name will be changing, the building, the personnel, the equipment, the vehicles, like that's all going to change. Say same. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm trying to, logic my way through what Trump just said. Is that the reasoning doesn't matter because all that really matters is that the American right wing is obsessed with honoring the Confederacy. They love it. They love the Confederate flag. They love Confederate iconography. They love the Confederate generals. They love the lost cause myth. I mean, they live for that shit. And it's not so much. By the way, I want to make this very clear. The whole argument that we're making here isn't about the issue that these people own slaves, therefore nothing should be named after them. Because that's the argument conservatives go to all the time. Because if you look hard enough or not hard at all, you can find people in history who did things wrong that we honor all the time. That's true. We understand that. The issue is that these people are being honored with statues, schools, roads, buildings, state holidays, specifically because they fought to defend slavery. And we have this really bad habit with studying history in the fact that we put people in good person, bad person boxes. This historical figure was a good person. This historical figure was a bad person. And that's the incorrect way to look at history because I'm not terribly interested in making declarative statements about whether historical figure X was, a good, decent human being in their heart. I don't care. What I care about are that person's, words, that person's actions, and how those words and actions affected society. And then looking through history, we can find out what the effects of those actions were on society, and then we can learn from them. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So Thomas Jefferson, let's go with Thomas, the original TJ, Thomas Jefferson. He was a slave owner and he was a child abuser. Sally Hemings was 14 years old and, he raped her. She was 14 and she was his property, had several kids, with his slave whom he also enslaved. Like the man enslaved his own fucking children. But anyway, so Jefferson, morally, if I want to, codify this guy, yeah, that's bad, obviously. However, he did write the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom. And the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom was what James Madison based our First Amendment on. Like that was the foundation upon which the First Amendment of the Constitution was laid. So yeah, if we want to honor Thomas Jefferson for, his pioneering writing and his ideas for religious freedom, ones that we still hold a lot of value today. And so they built a statue for him, they put him on currency, they name a few cities after him. I'm fine with that. Like you're not going to see me, revolting in the street for that. But that cannot be said about Robert E. Lee or Braxton Bragg, or Jeb Stuart, Stonewall Jackson. For these guys, Their only significant contribution to American history was the fact that they led an armed rebellion against the United States for the primary purpose of securing the rights of owning black people as slaves. And I said black people as slaves on purpose because it was specific. If you read the Constitution of the Confederacy, it states that something like no ex post facto law or bill of attainder shall ever be written in this nation prohibiting the right of ownership of Negro slaves. So the Confederacy, the very first article of the Confederate Constitution, I think it's Article 1, Section 3, the very first article states that as long as the Confederacy exists, slavery could never be prohibited. And also slavery of black people in particular. Like, it was that specific. So when people want to go out there and say, yeah, it's really important that we honor the heroes of the South, like what heroes? Like what other than the fact that Robert E. Lee led the Confederate Army against, the Union, tell me, like, what are you remembering him for? What? The fact that, he loved slavery so much that he had to lose in court twice in Virginia, a slave state, before the slaves were taken away from him because he tried to violate his father-in-law's will. Like, the fact that he was notorious for beating and whipping his slaves and literally rubbing salt in the wounds, not as an antiseptic, but just to cause more pain. Like, it's just really dark. Like, if American conservatives are, mystified as to why they have almost no support from minorities, that the, Republican Party since, the civil rights era has been anywhere between 80 to 90% white the entire time. And no minority group anywhere votes majority Republican. None of them. The closest ones will be like not even that close. Like, Asian and Hispanic Americans vote like 65% against Republican parties, and it's not even that close. But yeah, like, if the American right wants to remain relevant, it has to let go of this absurdity of honoring the Confederacy, the South, and the legacy of slavery, and or pretending that slavery like wasn't as bad as people say it was, that it was like, some sort of, hit the microphone there, that it was some sort of a genteel, calm society where, oh, they treated them like family, or pretending that racism doesn't exist. Like, people, we always talk about how important the past is. Conservatives do it too. They do it all the time. They talk about how we must remember our past and how important it is that we learn from the past and we honor the past. But whenever someone brings up something uncomfortable about the United States did something wrong, did something immoral, did something illegal, they try to pretend it didn't exist. Especially when it comes to minority groups and the things that they should be ashamed of, but instead of practicing some self-reflection and humility and honestly just intellectual consistency with looking at the past, they paper over, pretend it didn't happen, and then glorify people like Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. And I don't know, look, you guys want to keep getting your asses kicked in elections, keep doing shit like this. You're doing us a favor.